2009, David collapsed and was taken by ambulance to a nearby hospital, where he underwent surgery to relieve swelling on the brain due to trauma. His parents knew that injury may result from playing football, but they, like many in the U.S., did not realize their child may never recover. According to the Centers for Disease Control, last accessed October 20, 2009, as many as 3 million sports-related concussions occur every year. As pressure to succeed grows and young athletes train harder and harder, concussions have become epidemic in the United States. Violent crashing and heart-pounding hits are part of sports, but as retired professional players are starting to see, the impacts are long-lasting and often devastating. Today, I will examine the new studies linking sports concussions to brain damage, then diagnose the ramifications for youth athletes, and finally, prescribe changes to the current laws that will help protect kids like David. According to the American Association of Neurological Surgeons, a concussion is an injury to the brain that results in the temporary loss of normal brain function. The brain is constructed of soft tissue, which is cushioned by spinal fluid. When a head injury occurs, the brain sloshes around, banging against the skull. It is this violent act that creates the temporary brain loss. Every 21 seconds in the U.S., a person suffers from serious brain injury. In a new study, Dr. Ann McKee, a neuropathologist at Boston University School of Medicine, proves that concussions from sports causes chronic traumatic encephalopathy. CTE is a devastating degenerative brain disease that leads to ALS and early onset Alzheimer's. Chronic concussions also lead to many other problems. A study conducted by the University of North Carolina in 2009 studied the issue and found a connection between the number of concussions and the early onset of dementia. Studying the brains of pro football players gives us insight into the damage that is caused during a concussion. A study conducted of 1,000 retired NFL athletes showed they were 19 times more likely to get Alzheimer's than the general population. The impacts can be tremendous, explained Dr. Robert Cantu, the neurosurgeon in charge of the study. In all contact sports, athletes hit each other with tremendous power. We are all familiar with a punch-drunk boxer, but a taekwondo kick or a karate punch can just as easily cause a concussion, as can a body check in hockey or a collision in lacrosse. The impacts of multiple concussions can be devastating. Many diseases such as CTE can only be diagnosed post-mortem. Looking at the cross-section slide of the brain shows that these trauma-inflicted athletes have brown pigment on their brain, sign of the trauma. According to Dr. Ann McKee in 2009, 110-year-old brains do not look as traumatized as those from NFL players who donated their brains to science. But while NFL football players may take on these risks voluntarily, children do not, and concussions do not only affect pro athletes. Youth athletes actually are susceptible to worse damage because their brains are not fully developed. Serious injury is caused by concussions in teens or early 20s, but the effects do not show up until decades later. According to CBS News, October 17, 2009, as many as 150,000 concussions occur every year for high school athletes. But unlike pro school or club games, there are not trainers or medically trained personnel on the sideline. With no one there to diagnose the brain injury, injured players are more likely to return to the field and exacerbate the brain damage. After a player suffers a concussion, even mild contact leads to permanent and extreme brain damage. According to the previously cited doctors organization, AANS, a second hit soon after the first does not have to be very hard to be deadly or permanently disabling. In 2006, 13-year-old Zach Leadich was playing what he thought would be a normal game under the Friday Night Lights. But after a hard hit, he fell to the ground to leave his head. He had suffered a concussion. 2 quarters later, his coach put him back onto the field where he collapsed. Zach suffered stroke after stroke after stroke. According to the Seattle Times, March 10, 2009, he remained in a coma for over 1 month. Today, after 3 years in a wheelchair and months of rehabilitation, he's relearning to talk and stand on his own 2 feet. Doctors believe that had he remained on the bench and not suffered another hit, Zach Leadich would have made a full recovery. According to the Brain Injury Association of Washington, accessed October 20, 2009, Zach's law, passed by Washington's legislation, now requires all sports programs to be informed of the risks athletes suspected of suffering a concussion to remain off the field, undergo neurological testing, and be cleared by a doctor before resuming play. But concussions also affect youth in many other sports. Violent sports such as boxing, taekwondo, ice hockey, soccer, and lacrosse all have high concussion rates. The Arizona School of Health Sciences in 2008 studied the issue and found that while hockey reported the most concussions for male athletes, taekwondo reported the most for female, at 8.77 per 1,000 athlete exposures. Taekwondo is particularly troubling, as not only are kicks to the head legal for children 12 and up, but they actually receive more points. Sean McKenzie was an avid ice hockey player in Canada, in AAA and AAA leagues. However, after his 7th concussion, his parents decided to pull him out of the sport. Sean was 14 when he quit the violent sport. According to ESPN, March 27, 2009, body checking, which caused many of Sean's concussions, were finally banned after youth received too many. However, with minor penalties, it is passively accepted as part of the game. So now that we better understand the devastating impacts concussions leave on players, what can we do to protect them? Calling your local congressperson and advocating passions of bills similar to Zach's law is one solution. A law preventing athletes from returning to the field after any sign of trauma would ensure that 13-year-olds like Zach don't have concussions that lead to stroke or death. But calling on our government officials is not enough. The strongest solution is to bring attention to the issue so that parents of athletes and coaches can know the risks and can prevent further injury. It is assumed that injuries in sport occur, but parents are entering their children into risks that they are not fully aware of. The NFL is just beginning to acknowledge the problem, but amateur sports are not addressing it at all. Moving for changes of rules in local games is the best way to protect our youth. After an uproar in Canadian hockey leagues, parents advocated the banning of body checking, changing the rules to ensure safer hitting can happen in the United States in the future. Contact local Pop Warner, club sports organizations, or USA Taekwondo to help. Sports concussions are affecting families all over the country, and no one is talking about significant ramifications. In football, the thrill of the game hardly comes from the violence, but all contact sports have dangers. Today, I x-rayed the new studies linking sports concussions to brain damage. Then, I identified the unique risks these injuries pose on younger brains. And finally, suggested some solutions we, as responsible members of our community, can be a part of. David Sumner went to practice that afternoon, as he had for the past 5 years, expecting to play football as usual. But the trauma he suffered so damaged his brain that he never regained consciousness. Instead of looking forward to his high school graduation, his parents would never see him enter high school. They would never see him enter middle school. David was 10 years old when he died. Insufficiently regulated sports caused that. Let's help kids like David and their families make his